Typically closers are 10%. I paid you 10%. I know why we did that, but I can't keep paying you 10% unless you're gonna take the sales call. So the way I look at referrals is what would I be willing to pay for an ad, and then that's what I pay them for a referral.
What do you recommend doing with that extra money?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I do, and then you can decide if it's worth your time.
My mom just passed away about 3 weeks ago. And one of my biggest fears was that my parents would die without them seeing me step into the person that I knew I was called to be. And that would really keep me awake at night. And when I had negative $200 in my bank account, that was something that I always thought of. Man, I hope my mom or dad doesn't die before seeing me become at least what I know I'm capable of. And I remember on a call with my mom a couple of weeks before she passed away, I think I did like 60,000 in a day or something like that. And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, Mama." She said, "Oh, you made some moolah." You know, and those are memories that I'll never be able to forget because of how transformative this experience has been to me. So it's not about the money at all. Like I haven't bought anything new, like nothing's changed. It's just really being able to see the person that I knew I could be and stepping into that person. I just remember November 4th, sitting on this couch and I asked Tanner a question. I said, "Tanner, like I'm just struggling to find my purpose." And he said, "Your purpose right now is just to not be broke. So you have to do whatever you need to do in order to not be broke." And I implemented everything that Tanner said. The pillars that he gave me became my pillars during my sales call. The offers that he gave me became my offers that I sold to people. Changed around with the prices a little bit, of course, massaged it. And over the course of those next 30 days, from November 4th to December 7th, did $65,000. And that was like, oh my God, like I can do this? And that was just life-changing for me. Good to see you.
Yeah, bro.
How you doing? I'm good, man. Thank you. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. Of course. What's going on?
Man, you know, just
of course. I appreciate you having me back.
Yeah, dude. I don't even think we have the first video out yet. Dude.
Nah.
Yeah.
What's going on, Tanasi?
It's actually, I actually realized I'm like, we're asking Devin to come back. We have no video out yet.
Yeah, that's but it is what it is, man.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
I don't know what you want to cover today. Maybe you have like new challenges that you're running into and bottlenecks.
Yeah, I wrote some stuff down.
Okay, yeah. So I guess, yeah, I mean, just walk me through.
Yeah, so I'll just give you an update, really.
Yeah.
All right, so the first month afterwards that we met, we did like, it was like 93,000, but it was like a couple of refunds of deposits and stuff like that.
For sure.
So it ended up being like 65, right?
And it seems like most of the calls you're having are, I mean, they're good leads.
Yes.
Like they seem like super good.
And that's another thing that's, I think, made the biggest difference is my application. So I'm still not getting very many calls,
Yeah.
but I'm closing like,
But the calls you're getting are all solid.
like 80-90% I close.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and the pillars are compelling. I mean, those pillars are just so good.
So I literally went through and watched the videos and just like word for word.
Well, yeah. And you know what's funny that I noticed when I saw your calls is that a lot of the guys you're getting, they don't even run ads. And so they're perfectly positioned because they're coming there because they don't know any other way to scale. So it's like, it's such a perfect frame because it's putting you in such a great position, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I didn't even think of that, but.
Like at least the two calls I heard, like, because both the guys I heard, they're not running ads.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, I can't scale with, and they were saying whatever.
Most of them have been like that. Yeah.
Which is perfect because it's, yeah, I mean, it's like, because again, that's what I was trying to tell you is like, you can use it as the alternative.
Yeah, so then this last month, these past 30 days, it was really in 3 weeks because my mom passed away, so I didn't really do anything for a week.
Sorry, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you, man. And yeah, we ended up at 175 for that month and about 100.
Do you even have any team members yet?
I got a couple. So it was like 85% margin on that. Yeah.
Jeez Louise, bro.
Right. So yeah, that's where I have a team of 3 podcast bookers who help me get people booked on podcasts.
Okay.
And that's really it. I have like one part-time VA kind of.
So are they like when they're booking them, are they like, what exactly does that entail? Are they like reaching out to people, or is it kind of like they already have the connection, they just kind of like set it up?
Yeah, so they do like cold reach out, okay, to people that I'm not connected with personally. I typically, because it takes me 2 minutes. Like
email, DM, whatever.
Yeah, email, typically email.
And they like, I'm assuming, just so I understand the process, is it more for you or is it more for the client?
For the client.
Right.
Yeah, so the client will fill out an in-depth onboarding form. That onboarding form will hand off to the podcast bookers. And
they're kind of using that.
And they're using that to say, okay, these are the categories of the different podcasts, and we go and do research and get them on podcasts that are aligned with them.
Sure.
Now, where I come into the fulfillment is if I have somebody in my phone that I can connect them with, I just send a quick
Very
DM
quickly.
and I'm like, hey, here's
right.
this person or whatever.
Of course.
There's some things I want to talk about in regards to that, which I have some questions about.
Okay.
But they're really the only 3 people that I have.
And are they like?
And I have one.
Are they like American? Are they foreign? What are they?
They're foreign. Yeah.
And they're just super cheap then.
Yep, they're super cheap and they're super experienced.
Nice.
So I hired them for experience.
Like Philippines or something?
Nice. From the Philippines.
Perfect.
So they're
and they'll work hard too.
They are
because
hard
it's like,
workers.
Yeah, the money goes so far over there, bro. Because like I was literally in Bali and it's 75% cheaper. So if you're giving them $5 an hour, it's like $20 an hour.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So I pay them pretty well comparatively for them. So I got them 3. I have like a part-time VA and then I got 1 messenger.
What's the VA do? That's different.
They like help set up my base camp for my client.
Yeah, kind of like project management.
Yeah,
okay.
kind of like project management.
So you have like one setter that does DMs for you now?
Yeah, he's super good.
Did you train him or was he already done it?
He was already trained, but he had been working with me in the past and I had to let him go because I just wasn't in the place to have a messenger. Then I brought him back. Nice. And he's been crushing it. He's brought me like 3 or 4 deals.
Okay, sweet. What do you pay him?
So right now I'm paying him 10%, but that's changing. We agreed that once we get to 5, because what I didn't want to do, Tanner, remember when I last came to you, I was at a bad place.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to pay him hourly or give him a base because I didn't know if I could afford it.
Right.
So I just said, you know what? Let's just do the first 5 people. I'll give you 10%. Then we're going to transition to $1,500 a month plus some type of base pay, which I don't know yet because my offer is expensive. So I kind of
I mean, what? So like, what did you get last month? You had 175, and then was he responsible for all of that? Or
no, he was responsible for like. He was responsible for about 35K of that.
Okay. So, I mean, if he's getting you big deals, but they're working, it's good. I mean, a typical thing is 3%. So, I mean, if you did 100 grand, you get an additional $3,000. If you did 200 grand, so like, so technically in a month, if he were to set up all the deals and you got 3% of that, you're looking at about, what is it, like 6, like 5? That's like 5K. So he'd get like 6,500, which is like, I think the range that a setter should get is like between like full time. I think that's kind of the range. I don't think they should really get much more than that. So
and he's also overseas too, but the dude is legit.
Oh yeah,
the dude is legit. He's from South Africa.
So he lives in South Africa.
Yeah,
and so South Africa is kind of like, I mean, their prices were more normal. It's not really third world. I mean, the goal for me is like the way percentages should work in a perfect world is unless it's a sales rep, because sales reps, it's like they're going to automatically cap on time. This is typically where I'm trying to get them to. If they're making more than 7, then that's where I start like, hey, that's a lot. I mean, typically. With that being said, if he's doing all the work for you and he's booking you big deals, that's great. But 10% is too much because he's not closing the deal. Like you're doing the hardest part.
Yeah, and like that's why I said, like before we started this, I told him, hey, listen, I'm only doing it up to 5 because that also protected me as the business owner because I was at a place where I had $10 in my account, so I couldn't afford.
Or you could just give him like 5%. So you could say like, look, I'll give you 5% of every deal, no base, or you could do like a base with that. But I think the range you should be looking for a setter is 4 to 7 because otherwise it's like. Man, if you're starting to pay people like 10 grand, 12 grand,
no.
It depends on the business for sure. But I think, the problem is like, I don't even think he's maxed out. So if you're doing 175 and let's say with one setter, if you're doing $20,000 deals, you could get to 400. I mean, well, then the problem is like, you're going to be paying this guy like 15 G's and stuff. And it's like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And that's why I told him we're going to have to relook.
So what does he want to make? Have you asked? Have you said like, hey, what is a number that's going to make you happy?
To be honest, I haven't had that conversation.
You need to ask him. You say, hey man, so like what I would do is you break it down. You're like, look, so typically closers are 10%. I paid you 10%. I know why we did that, but I can't keep paying you 10% unless you're going to take the sales call, right? Which is like a whole nother skill. So it's like typically, I would say like typically what they do for setters is even that might be a problem, but you might need a cap. So I would say, so what I'd like to know before I go into any numbers, like how much would you like to make to be happy? And see if his number's realistic. If he's like, well, I want 15,000, it's like, that's not efficient for your business.
He's a young kid.
So like if he's in that 4 to 7 range, then what I would try to make sure is he can make up to about 7, but that's the max. Because at that point, it just starts becoming too much cost for the business. Like, you don't need to pay that much to get a high quality person. Because if he says no, right? If he's like, well, I want to make 10, it's like, hey, I promise you can go find a great setter for $7,000 a month. Like, really good. So you don't need to pay past that. That's what I've seen the most for biz ops. So also keep in mind, because you're selling a $20,000 offer, 10% for a deal is a lot more. So I've even seen some people, what they'll do is they'll pay 8%, like for the closers. And then, they might do like 2 to 2.5% for the setter. The thing you have to look at is at the end of a month, what is he going to make? And so typically what will happen in a business is as the setter, as your money goes up like this, the setter's time and the closer's time will cap. And so it automatically kind of protects you, because, like, for example, all my closers can make unlimited commission, but they can only take so many calls.
Right.
A setter usually can only do so many sets, but the thing that you have that's working in his favor is you have $20,000 deals.
Right.
But if your deals were $3,000, it would automatically cap faster. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the price point now, it's a little higher than that now.
Oh, it's even higher. What is it?
Yeah, it's $40,000 for 52 podcasts, and then
for like a year,
pretty much.
It's kind of like a year.
Mm-hmm. And then
40K. So it's like 40 for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then 25 for pretty much 6 months.
Okay, 6. Okay, so yeah, there's nothing wrong with those prices. I think those are great prices. I just think because, you're selling at such a high clip, what you need to do is, to probably protect yourself, is you say, hey, you get da-da-da. Because the thing is, like, you don't want them to be incentivized either. But what you're probably going to have to do is either give a lower percentage that it's like, hey, no matter how much he works or how many deals he gets, he won't get above this number, or you're going to have to cap it.
Okay.
Right? Meaning you're like, hey, you can get this up to 7K, and then it caps. Meaning it's like, once you're hitting that number, bro, it's like, I just can't pay you more than that. And you just explain, you're like, because I can find someone, I love you and I want you to be here. I don't want you to think that, but at $7,000, there's a lot of talent that would want this job. And that's how jobs work in general, right? That's why, like, CEOs, if you bring in a CEO, it's like 20 to 30 grand, because for people that it's a really hard skill to find. And so those people want to be compensated accordingly. But this skill, yeah, it's important, but like that's usually the max. Like, if they're making more than that, I'm sure that could vary on businesses, but even like my top like setters, they're not making more than that. Like,
yeah, now he'll be happy with that.
Yeah,
100%.
So I would just do something like that. And with your closers, if you ever get a closer, which, like, you could get a closer. I wouldn't recommend it until you need it, because that's the most important part of your business. But if you wanted to get a closer, you would do the same thing where, like, maybe instead of 10%, you give them like, 7 or 8, because 10% of 20K is $2,000, and then that's 40,004. So you might start doing 8, where it's like, it just protects your margin a little bit, where you're not just, because they're like, oh, well, I want 10%. It's like, all right, go do 10% of a 6K deal. This one's 8% of 20.
So let me ask this then, in terms of percentage, right? So I have some of my I should say a lot of people right now are coming by word of mouth referral.
It's great, and those are the best businesses.
So what should I give the people that refer people to me? Because I know I asked you this one time. You said, like, 10 to 20.
Well, yeah, you want to incentivize them.
Right.
So if they're bringing you free leads that sign up, you want them to keep bringing you, I would usually give them 10%.
Okay,
because
that's what I plan.
Yeah, because it's like, if you give them two Gs or 4 Gs, they're going to be so incentivized to send you more people.
Right.
And you have to remember, you're not paying for it. And usually what will happen if you ran ads is that cost would go into ads. So the way I look at referrals is, what would I be willing to pay for an ad? And then that's what I pay them for a referral. So like my CAC, let's say on average, like, a lot of times it's lower. So for elite CEOs, we'll stay between, typically, I'd say we'll stay between 2 to 4K, but right now we're closer to the 4K. So if someone pays like 16,000, we give 10%, that's 1,600. That's actually much less than our normal CAC. So it actually is a win. Right? It's a win.
Sense, yeah.
Now, something else you could do too, if you wanted, is you could do a 2-way referral. So something that my sales team does is, when someone signs up, you're like, hey, by the way, if you know anyone who also would want podcasts, I do a 2-way referral where you'll get 10% off and they do. So if they gave you 20 grand, right? What you really want to do it off your CAC. So it may not be 10%. So you haven't ran any ads yet, right? Okay. So let's just say hypothetically, it would cost you $3,000, right? What you can do, and you can always change this. What you would do is you give $1,500 to the person who referred, and you take $1,500 off of
pretty
the
much the
person
same
who
as
signed
your
up.
CAC.
Yeah, it's exactly, but it's a two-way referral, so it's a benefit for both parties.
Wins.
Yeah, you could do that as well. You could definitely do that as well. So, but typically you want to do it off your CAC. So what I would recommend though is like, I think for your price package, people are going to want more. So if you're going to do a two-way referral, you're probably going to need to do around $2,000 a pop, which would be 4,000 total. So that might be too much because now it's like that's $4,000.
Yeah, and then there's some other expenses too that I'm
so probably what I would do for now is if you get referrals for 20,000, I'd give them two. I'd give them 2K, and on the 40, I would do the same thing. I'd give them 4. And the reason is like, see if that brings you more referrals.
Just straight 10%.
If it doesn't, then maybe you lower it a little bit. Where like this one's like 1,500 or even like I think $2,000 is fair though. Like I really
100%.
think $2,000 is fair. I think probably for this one, it'd be similar.
Yeah, I just want to take care of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you want to incentivize them to bring the referrals back. So it's either a one-way referral or a two-way referral. Typically what you do on a two-way referral though is you'll split it. So
yeah, that's how
or you give them the option. So you go, hey, so what I can do is if you give me a referral, what I'll do is I can do a two-way where I'll give half to you and half to your buddy, or I'll just do a one-way free. Which would you prefer? And you let people pick. The only incentive for a two-way referral is it also like incentivizes the other person to sign up, and then like it's a win-win. That's the only difference.
Okay.
But either way, you just got to make sure that it usually is under your cost of acquisition for ads. Since you don't know, my guess is if you were going to get a $20,000 deal consistently, it's probably going to cost you like $3,000 to $4,000 is my guess. A $40,000 deal might be the same. So I would say like that's kind of your safe zone if you're going to do that. I want to go above $4,000.
Okay. No, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. A couple of other things.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of break down, number one, how I've been getting leads. So some referrals have been working well. A lot of the times I'll post my new clients on social media.
But how are you getting referrals? Do you ask them? Or do they just do it?
No. So this is a lot. So a lot of them are indirect referrals. Meaning I saw this guy post that he's working with you. That means you must be legit. So can I work with you too?
Oh, okay. So like it's
like social proof.
Nice. Yeah. That's great.
So a lot of it's like Onik and guys like this that I've been helping out. They've been go online and like sing my praises, which I'm extremely grateful for. And then that'll bring me in 1 or 2 people, see it, etc.
Perfect.
All right. So there's that. Also, I'm targeting
Meaning those. The funny thing is those you don't even necessarily have to pay for a referral because it's not like usually a real referral is
like if I get it, someone introduces it to me.
It's like so you said Onik, it would be like if he puts someone in a 3-way combo.
Exactly.
And if it's indirect, you technically don't even have to give a referral.
Right.
You could, but
so there's that. There's number 2. I'm partnering with. I'm trying to be super strategic, like looking at things that nobody else is doing. So nobody else is like partnering with podcasters. I think I mentioned this to you in a text. So what I go is I say, hey, Tanner, you got a podcast? Tanner's like, yeah. Well, what does every podcast guest want more of? They want to be a guest on more podcasts.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll give you 10% of every person that you send to me that closes. I'll give you 10% of all cash collected.
So like the guests on their podcast.
Right. So what I incentivize them to do, I say, hey, listen, at the bottom of your form, just add a little question that says, do you want to be booked on more podcasts? If they click the box yes, throw them into a 3-way group chat with me, and I'll take it from there, and I'll give you 10%.
If you close, right.
So I've gotten 1 or 2 deals from that, and I've only partnered with like 2 podcasts, right? So I'm trying to go for some big dogs too. So like is one person that I'm getting. He's a funny dude. And then the other way is going to podcasts that regularly have guests, and then having a convo in the DMs, being like, hey, saw you on this podcast, loved the episode. And then just going into a messaging process, being like, hey, so you're looking to get on more podcasts?
But like for the guests of the podcast?
Yes, for the guests.
So like you're saying you'll go to look to see who's on a podcast and message them.
Yeah, because my methodology is, well, if they're being on that podcast, they must want to be on more.
Sure.
And I've gotten 3 or 4 deals that have come from that.
How much time does that take you to do that though? Like,
I don't do it. That's my messenger.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's my messenger.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So there's that for lead gen. That's kind of what I'm doing.
Okay.
The place that I don't want to be at though is the place which I don't think will happen because it seems to be happening consistently, is like I'd get dependent on referrals. Because the referrals are great, but you don't know when the next one's coming.
Sure. So, I mean, the thing that's going to be the absolute most consistent for you is the last one. Because you can control that. So what you could do is you could set SOPs. You could say, hey, you need to reach out to X amount of people a day. like I would spend time probably watching that process and seeing how he does it. So just
Okay.
so you have clarity, what I've been doing in the business recently, what I did is like first I'll audit. So like the other day, I audited Thanasi, perfect example. And I just got on Zoom and just watched what he did. And by the end of the day, I looked at him and I was like, so do you just spend all your time QCing, which is just a fancy word for like video editing and like all this bullshit? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, like, do you feel like no one else can do that? And he's like, well, I mean, maybe. And I was like, okay, well, that to me is like a low level task because it takes a ton of his time. It needs to be done, but it takes a ton of his time. And I'm like, what if we could get someone else to do that so you could come up with creative ideas? Because the issue we've had, at least I think is an issue, is a lot of social media managers, they're not very creative. They're just kind of like button pushers, right? So I audited him and then I gave him feedback on what to fix, right? So it's like, here's how you need to better optimize your time. And then we created SOPs. And so the SOP was like, you'd have a task and it'd be like, okay, video.
Yeah, I started doing, I have a lot of that.
Right, so exactly what to do.
Right.
And then underneath it would be like the high level steps. So meaning, you know, it's like step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have like a checklist. So by the end of the day, it's like, did you do this? Did you do that? That's like the most you need to do. You don't maybe technically need to have the checklist, but that's what I would do first is like that guy you were talking about. That's the most scalable. So I would make sure you spend at least one full day, however he works, and you just get on and you watch. Like, it's gonna be so fucking boring, but you just watch him for a full day. Okay. And you just try to stay focused because it is fucking boring. And you just tell him, do a normal day. So like when I was auditing him, he was like, I'm gonna go eat, I'm gonna take a shit, whatever. I was like, great. He goes and does it, and I'm just sitting there. Now, I did fall off later in the day because once it got to like 2 or 3, I was like, what else do you have left to do? He's like, it's just more QC. So I was like, okay, so you're just going to do the same thing I saw you doing. So at that point, it doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily looking. I'm a little bit looking how long they work. I mean, that is going to be somewhat important, but the big thing is the steps. So the reason I'm saying that for you is because this is the only actual way you have to handle output. So for example, what you should be looking for is once you watch him, you optimize whatever he's doing, right? But then you do a video, or what I did with him is he's making the videos. So like with Thanasi, I went through it and I went through his thing. I was like, this, and this. I want you to SOP this. When you're done, tell me and I'll check your SOPs because I don't want to do SOPs for everyone in the business.
So let's say I wanted to hire somebody for that.
For what?
It's like kind of help me out with, like, I mean, I guess I could do it myself.
The SOP stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to hire it out.
Okay.
Because like all I'm saying is what I'm telling you to SOP is the guy who's reaching out to you. So what I'm saying is first I'd want you to watch him. So because the reason you want to watch him is why? What if right now he's reaching out to 3 people a day and he's being a lazy?
Yeah. And this is the thing, like he sounds just like me. Like you can't tell the difference.
That's perfect.
But sometimes the output, and he'll admit this because he'll probably watch this video too.
Yeah.
Because he loves you, by the way.
That's good.
Sometimes the output isn't there, right?
Yeah. So for example, again, the first thing I do when I audit, so when I watch the Thanasi, I just like do your normal day. I'm not going to say a word. Don't say a word because you want to see. You're like act like I'm not here. I turn my camera off. I'm on mute. So if they want to say, I'm like, if you want to ask a question, whatever, but I don't say much. The only time I'll say something is like, hey, what are you doing now? Like if I don't understand what they're doing. Okay. The reason for that is you need to know what the baseline is. And to be frank, as you start having people come in your business, this should be done before they even come in. Yeah. Because then you're like, hey, I need you to do this. And guess what happens? If that guy ever leaves, guess what? They come in, they watch this, and they're good to go. They're good to go pretty much, right? So I audit him, and then the next day I'm like, hey, here's all the stuff you need to do. We came up with like his list of like, here's all the stuff you need to SOP. I did an example for him. I was like, here's how you do a video. Here's how you do this. Do the rest. So he's doing those right now, right, T? Yeah, better say that. So he's doing that. The reason I'm telling you to do that is what you just said. So this guy, for example, you should have like, so let's say like you do the video. So the video is like showing the process. Doesn't have to be the full day, but like let's say it shows it for like half hour, an hour. Okay. Then your high level steps would be like reach out, to 8 people a day, and like whatever that number needs to be. So if he needs to reach out to at least, let's say 10 people an hour and he works 8 hours a day, then this should be fucking 80 people. Yeah. And then it's like step 2, step 3, and you just SOP it. So then that way you have something consistent with this, because out of all the methods you said, the indirect referrals can't count on that. No. The forms can't count on that. This, it's in your control because you're reaching out. So you need to SOP the out of this, because that's how my messengers do. Like how I think I saw you post in the group, 0.5 per hour with ads, 0.2 usually per hour with cold. And so that part's fine, but it's also like it just, I don't know what he's doing all day, but it sounds to me like all he's doing is reaching out and having conversations, which means there's no ads, which means he should be reaching out a lot.
Okay.
He should be doing a hell of a lot of reach outs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes sense.
So
yeah, that's good feedback.
So, okay. Do you have any questions about that before we go further?
Yeah, one question. So what kind of takes some of his time, and I'm wondering if maybe we can get some support to help him with this, is like going to find the podcast. Then he has to look through the guests, find their contact information. So, it's not as easy as just, hashtag podcast. It's like, okay, now I have to go to Spotify, look up an entrepreneurship podcast. So one of the things that we do.
Okay, walk me through that again. So he does what first?
So in order for him to find people to reach out to, we do it based off people who have been guests on podcast already.
Why can't you just go to the podcast, look at the person's name, and that's it?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes that takes some added time though.
How?
Because instead of just going to Instagram and scrolling, you have to go to Apple Podcasts, look for new podcasts. But one of the things I'm doing to mitigate this, my podcast bookers, they do tons of research. So I think I found a solution, just like implemented this last week, where I just give him the list of all of their research with all of the podcasts, and I just hand it off to him. So
research of what?
Oh, they research like what podcast they want to get clients on. Does that make sense? So a lot of our clients are in the online marketing space. So we have a ton of online marketing podcasts. So I say, hey, his name.
Oh, right. Because you're saying, okay, so the podcast bookers, client comes on board, they get their sheet and they start outreaching. And what you're saying is over time, they build a list of people to reach out to. And so what you're saying is that your setter could take that list and then what?
And then from there, he just has a link he can click on to go directly to the podcast. What he was doing.
You mean like the IGDM?
Well, it's yeah. So what it'll do, and this is kind of the thing that takes some time. He has to go to the podcast, look at the guests, click on the podcast, see if the guest's Instagram is in the bio. If it's not in the bio, then he has to manually go and look the person up. So it just takes some added time versus kind of what's normal.
But I guess I don't see how the podcast bookers are shortcutting that because they still, all they have is a link to that. So I guess you're just cutting out like a couple steps is all you're saying, right?
Yeah. So like we don't really get the podcasts. Well, I guess we do. Yeah. So I think one of the things we need to do better is just get the social media of the podcaster as well. So then we can
guest podcaster, or you mean the actual the host or the guest? I'm sorry, I get confused.
I'm getting confused.
No, you're good. So you get the link of the Instagram of the host?
Of the host, yeah.
Okay.
But we need it for the guest. So that's what I'm saying is the thing that takes him some time is finding the Instagrams for the guest.
Yeah, because so if he comes to Tanner's podcast and I had George, Alex, and Bob, he's trying to get their Instagram to go pitch them.
Exactly.
Right. So I that's fine, but I don't really see how that's really helping you. And I think it needs to be done. I mean, the only way, unless you did this, you'd have a VA. You could pay a very cheap VA who you give them all these podcasts. And they go through. Yeah, they go through and they just get all the guests and they make a list for him. So he just goes
which I've done before. Right. So I'm just.
Well, why did you stop?
I don't know, to be honest.
That's like remedial $3 work an hour.
Yeah. So just keep doing.
Yeah, because like
it'll make his job easier.
Well, yeah, because and to be frank, your podcast bookers aren't really doing that. They're getting the actual hosts.
Right. That's
you need the guests. So what I would do is you hire someone on your team. You get another VA who's full-time job, or like, what does this VA do? Maybe you could give that to them.
Yeah, she's not really doing too much at all.
Yeah. So like, dude, like how many could they get in an hour? Like probably at least like 15.
Yeah.
So it's definitely. Like if you're doing 4 hours a day and they have 60 people, that gives your boy at least 60 people a day. The thing you have to figure out with him is how many leads does he need per day to reach out to? So if he needs 100 a day and this girl can only do 60, well then you need a new VA to do that.
Yeah, I'll hire like 2 to just do it.
Right. Yeah. So because then all he has to do is click and he's good to go. And I agree that is worth the extra expense because he could do it, but that's probably taking him from a DM a minute to a DM every 5 minutes.
And that's the feedback he's been giving me.
Yeah, so fix that for sure.
Fuck.
Yeah, because your profit's so high, bro. I mean, the cool thing about your offer that I realized too is you're not actually doing fulfillment really. Like you are, but it's like you're like, I get you on the podcast and then your job's done. Like you don't have to like set them up or I don't know. It's like it's great because you're doing fulfillment, but you're not. So you don't have a lot of expense. All your expense is pretty much. Yeah, it's just not like it's great because you can just anyways, it's really
so
good.
Let me ask a question on fulfillment. Because the one thing I want to make sure of, and you mentioned this last time, and I've think I found a solution, but I want to talk through it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that every client gets great results. And 90% of my clients have been so happy with the results.
Yeah.
But the one thing I want to be able to do is deliver the same result to everybody. But that's hard.
What's the result you want?
Right? Like the top of the top podcast. So
Okay.
I'll explain what I've done. So I've had a couple of people that be like, this isn't what I signed up for. Although
what's their feedback? And also you have to understand, like, I think
there's been like one person.
I know, and you also just have to understand, like, I don't know, man. It's just hard to like never get that. It's just every business gets it.
And for me, I'm like, I want to give them what they want. Mm-hmm. But it's like some of the stuff they say is just like illogical. It's like, well, it's not on YouTube. I don't want to do it. I'm like, well, did you know that for every one YouTube podcast, there's 15 audio podcasts. They're all on audio, bro. Yeah. So people don't understand some of these things. So I think maybe I have to do a better job of setting expectations up front with that.
Yeah, that's just something you're learning as well. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I said on the sales calls. If you're getting objections at the end, you bring in discovery. If you're having issues in fulfillment, you bring it to the front after they're a client.
Okay.
Or like, you're like, hey, just so you know, someone's gonna be this and that. It's all setting expectations.
Yeah. So let me ask you then, like, what do you think the potential with what my offer is?
I mean, if you're doing 200,000 right now and it's all organic, I mean, then yeah, I mean, this would definitely work with that. You pump the fuck out of it for sure. You have to understand, like, it's all about cost of acquisition. So let's say at a $20,000 deal, you have to spend $4,000 to get a client. So what? That's still $16,000. Let's say after you pay your team, how much is your expenses per team member? Or do you know, like, per month? What's it per month?
I think last month it was around like 10.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically you're spending 10. You're 10 hard cash right now, period. So let's say you spent in a month. Let's just say it takes you 4,000 to acquire a customer, which I think is reasonable. It might be better. Let's say 4,000. So let's say you spend 20K, right? So you get 5 guests. Right? So if you get 5 guests and they give you 100 grand, right? You minus the 20, so you're at 80. Okay, plus the expenses of your team, it's 10. So that's still 70% margin. It's like, okay, you're totally fine right now. Like, I wouldn't even worry about it. So, and the thing is, you can change. So when the question you're like, well, should I charge more, whatever? It's like, do whatever you think is best to start, and then you can change. If you think you can sell it, like if you can sell 20,000, you can probably sell 22,000. But if you think
right now, like I said, I'm at 25 now.
Okay, so yeah, so if you can sell 25, you can sell 27. But it's up to you. It's like, that's pretty high, and I don't think it's that big of a deal because that's part of why you're charging so much. But what I'm trying to get at is, I think if you start running ads, it can scale very fast because it's an easy sell now. The way the issue you had earlier was not that it wasn't, the issue most people have is that if they came to me with your offer, one, they can't actually deliver on it, and you seem to be delivering. Number two is that, and like delivering to me is like, at the end of the day, I think what puts you in a good spot is if you get someone on a big podcast and it doesn't deliver meaning like they don't get the leads they want, it's like, then that to me is not like, that's not you. It's just like, well, I got you on the biggest podcast. I don't know what else to tell you. That's all you can control. You're not controlling the rest, right? Now that will help you. That 100%. Will help you. But like, for example, if you get me on, like I was on JLD, we'll see how it does. But like, if we don't get a ton of sales from it, then like, I'm not gonna be like mad at you for it. I'm just like, I would go to my team, be like, hey, like, I don't think we should do as many podcasts, or like, maybe we need to try something else. I wouldn't be like, oh, Devin didn't fucking get me more sales. It's like, that's irrelevant. So I think you're in a good spot. And then I think a lot of people want this. Like, a lot of people want stuff that like credibility, magazines, whatever. And so I think people are willing to pay for it. And the way you've positioned it is you're able to position it like, this is only for top dogs, right? Because I can't get you on the top podcast if you're not a top dog. So it kind of plays to people's ego and stuff. So yeah, I think your next step, if you start running ads, I think it'll cost you on average $4,000 a customer. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably what it'll cost you. It could cost you a little, but the thing is too, if you think about it, typically what you're wanting to do is like, you want to spend up to 25,000 or 25% of your sales. So if you're spending 25,000 bucks, dude, you can actually probably spend up to 8,000. Dude, if you can spend $8,000 a customer, you can't lose. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So typically with your marketing, you can spend up at scale. So again, you're not even at scale yet. So when I say scale would be like, you start having a really big team and you're really pushing, like, let's say you're triple, quadruple in size. If you could spend $8,000 a customer, which you can based on like what I'm projecting, because you're not paying for anything. Like all you'd have to do if you got bigger, if you tripled your business right now, the only difference is you'd have more closers, all percentage. You'd have more centers, pretty much all percentage. And then you'd have, let's say, 9 podcast bookers and like 3 VAs, which is like super low overhead. I mean, you're paying like if you do like, let's say last month you did 175, you're typically what it is, it's like, I want to say, you know, between your actual expenses, it's like marketing is usually like 60%, and then like the rest is like your team usually, but that's just your expenses. If you're doing it compared to your profit, it's a joke. I mean, it's just so high right now. So the good news is keep doing what you're doing. You don't overspend, don't overdo it. You always want to protect yourself so you don't get in a situation later. But yeah, I mean, I think your next step is if you want to scale, you SOP that process for that guy. And you should make it to where it's like, hey, he messages X amount of people a day. He gets this many convos. He gets this many bookings. So it's consistent. So you know, because that will give you peace of mind that you're looking for right now. And then you start running ads and you'll crush. I mean, the reason you'll crush with the ads is you can spend so much, and whoever can spend the most will win. That's how ads work.
Dan Kennedy.
Yeah. So whoever spends the most will win. And I am guesstimating you could still at scale spend $8,000 to acquire a customer, because you're charging so much. That's the benefit of charging high ticket, because you could spend tons of money to acquire a customer. The only reason people say ads don't work is they have to spend more money than it's worth.
Right.
So meaning like if they're charging $500, they can only spend like $100 to get a customer. For you can spend like 8,000.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think when you market, if I was you and I was doing ads, it would be like, hey, are you someone who runs, you know, tons of money on Facebook ads with very little results? Hi, my name is Devin Rodriguez, and I want to show you how you can literally get 10 times the traffic without spending any more money on ads. And then you walk them through it, and like, dude, that will fucking hit for sure. I told you that though when you were here. Like when we redid your stuff, I was like, it will hit. I think it would hit.
Yeah. I think part of me is just like, it's just a new skill set to learn. You know, it's a little intimidating.
So if you want to learn ads, then yeah, I mean, there's a million ways you can do it. I mean, the first way is you can just start trying to, I don't know, you just piecemeal it together and watch some YouTube videos. Yeah. Obviously, the other one is, you know, it's like masterminds. The other one is you could go to like udemy.com.
Yeah, I have a course on there, yeah.
Yeah, you just could like try to find some cheap courses on it.
Okay.
But it's like anything, the way you're going to learn the most is you just do it.
Yeah.
If you hire an agency, you could, and you could do like, you know, one of the things you could do with the agency is you tell them, hey, I'm going to hire you for X amount of months, but I want you guys to show me what you're doing. Like I would do that. I have an internal agency. I would take that deal.
That's what Mosey talked about.
Right. So you could do that, or you just start and you just will learn.
What would you recommend?
I mean, it depends on what you want. Like I know you have the money for it, so it just depends what you want to do. Like what I did is I took courses, like, and I was in masterminds, and then I saw how to do it in videos and stuff like that, and then I would do it myself. I think that's the best route. That's probably your like fastest, like most like low stress option. If you're like, I don't want to spend the money, then you would just have to, you know, you start figuring out. But there is some complexity, I think, now that like might be helpful, where it's like, hey, you got to add the pixels here and you got to do this and got just little stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a million ways to do it. You could find someone and just pay them one-off consultations. You could get in a mastermind. You could find a course.
Okay.
But I do think you should do it yourself, because you need to keep control. And the thing is remember, when you're starting, I've said this too, and like I have an agency, but I always say this, is like if you pay the agency and the agency is running your ads, you're usually spending more on the retainer than if you just spent the money yourself and blew it. So a lot of people go, well, what if I fuck it up and blow it? But if you think about it, if you're going to come out of the gate and spend 10K and the agency retainer's 5, just remember, if you spent 15 and you blew 5K, it's probably the same, because remember, if they're spending 10 and you're spending 15, that means their lead cost has to be like, let's say $4, and your lead cost could be like $7, and that's the same result. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Right.
Because you're not taking into account the management fee. So typically my rule of thumb is you don't hire an agency to run your ads till you're spending around $20,000 a month, where then it makes sense, because now the agency is like an employee, which you were going to have to pay anyways.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because like then at $20,000 a month, in my opinion, it starts taking quite a bit of time. It starts taking like, maybe not a ton of time, but it starts taking a couple hours a day, and it's like, it's not really worth it for you to do that for 2 hours a day.
I think I remember watching some of your old videos from like 2019. when you, or 2018, like when you hired your first one?
What, media buyer? Yeah.
You were like, yeah, I was spending like 2 hours this morning doing it, and then
It just gets tiring because like it's not hard. It's just like it's
right.
repetitive and whatever. So
Okay.
yeah, for where you're at, unless you're super maxed out, like I don't know if you're maxed out,
Dude,
but
I'm not like at all.
yeah, so then you need to start, then I would just start spending, and then all you're gonna do from here is like you've built the infrastructure. Make sure you have super good SOPs, and this shouldn't take you long. You have 5 people on your team. So it's like you have SOPs for the podcast, you have SOPs for the VA, you have SOPs for the setter the way I showed you. We can send you examples if you want it. And then the setter should start getting you consistency, meaning every month you should have at least X amount of sales from that guy. If you're not getting it, that's not good, because it's like even if he's and he's reaching out to, like if you reach out to 1 million people, someone's going to buy. And then from there, you start running ads. And then your option with ads is you can go straight to page, which is more scalable, but they're harder to convert.
Straight to page.
Yeah. So straight to page means this. So like when you click on my ads go like this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my ads. Now, upside is more follow-up, downside, harder to scale, right? Because at scale, you have 1 million DMs. What's better typically is this. So straight to page. So meaning like if you click on a Cole Gordon ad, it goes there, right? I'm friends with Cole. You opt in, and then it books a call, then it's a VSL and then a call.
Okay.
So what's the downside? Downside is usually they're less qualified. Upside, and you have to like call them and have setters. That's another thing your setter guy could do, is like he could start calling people, or you get one guy who just calls people and he does the messaging, or you can do it to start, whatever. Okay. But upside here is it's harder to get usually high quality people, because like they'll click the ad, they'll just fucking, yeah, whatever. Like we've had people do that, and then they get on the call and they have no clue what's going on. But the upside is it's easier to scale. Why? Because as you scale and you spend more, what happens? All you have to do is call more people. You don't have to message everyone, et cetera, which is harder to track. I know from experience. The reason we do it is it just works better. It just works better. Like I don't like doing it. It just works better. And that's why we teach you a lot in the mastermind too, because a lot of the clients are not that good. And so they need something that's easy. That's really all you have to do. And then to be frank, from there, you just rinse and repeat until it breaks. Breaks means like, you know, your profit for what you're spending doesn't make sense anymore. Meaning there's going to be a breaking point. So like, let's say for you, it's like 300K on ads. So you spend, and then finally like your profit, it goes like this, and then it starts going like that, and then it even starts going down. So it's like, it's better, in that case, you'd be better off spending 250 than 300. Does that make sense? Because as you spend more, so I'll try to make this, I don't know, you spend more like this. So what happens is your team cost goes like that, and then there comes like a breaking point where like the more you spend, it actually doesn't like help you anymore. It starts like the profit starts going down, and the end game is profit. Right. That's not a good way I drew it, but you get the point. So right now, so for example, you're at 85% margins at 200 grand. Let's just say that. Mm-hmm. So if you get to 400 grand and you're at 65% margins, you're still making more money, right? Yeah. But let's say you get to 600 grand and you're at 50% margins. Well, now you might have to start making a judgment call, because you're like, okay, well at 400 grand, I was at 65% margin. So I took home like, 250. If it's 600 grand, you're at 50% margin, you're only taking home 300. So you're doing 33% more work for 50K more cash. And then you're like, is it worth it? Right. So now you might optimize. And that's the call you make in business. That's why some businesses, they get past a point. It's like growing more doesn't make sense, because unless you fix the bottlenecks, right? Realistically, with what you're doing, because your ticket price is so high, and your ticket price is so high, and you don't really have very difficult fulfillment, and you're getting referrals, like I really think you could push it pretty hard, because you're not spending any ads. You're at 200. That's very abnormal. There's people who say like, oh yeah, it's like they don't make what they usually say they're making. So realistically, like let's say you start spending money on ads, your business will probably double immediately. So you're already at 400, and then you're not even scaled yet. So I really think you're looking at minimum, I mean, like if you're an idiot, probably you should at least get to probably 600,000 a month. And then if you really are good and you push it, you definitely should get over 1 million. I mean, this could definitely hit over 1 million. Okay. Sure. Because it's kind of like one of my portfolio companies. So like Kyle Henris is one of my portfolios, and he has a $25,000 offer, and he spent 11,000 last month and he collected 160. I mean, it's like all he has to do is spend more, and it's going to keep crushing. And that was after we redid a bunch of stuff, because he used to have a lower ticket price, but now he has a higher ticket price. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But what I'm getting at is you're in a good spot. I would just SOP all that. Have your setter, he needs to have set guidelines, because you need to know what to count on. It shouldn't just be he's in there doing whatever. It should be like, you're working this many hours, you have this many convos, you do that, and he's tracking. So he doesn't need to track everything, but it's like, if he's doing 100 combos, we need to know how many people respond and then how many of those he books. That's what we're really looking at.
Yeah.
So if he sends 100 messages a day, that's 3,000 a month. How many responded, right? And or you could just go from how many messages he sent out and how many he booked. But it really would be nice if he could track how many responded.
Okay.
At least for a month. Maybe not every month, but at least for a month. Because it probably will be a little tedious to track, but it'll help you. And then once you see that, you're like, okay, so if he sends 3,000 messages, he gets 300 responses. Out of 300 responses, he books 30 sales calls. Out of 30 sales calls, I close 10. I make a ton of money. It's
predictable.
Yeah, 100%. Because right now you have no predictability,
and that's kind of what makes me.
That's what makes me anxious. Yeah. So that will give you the predictability, and then from there, start spending money on ads, and then that will also give you predictability. Because then ads, what I love is I'm like, so every time I spend this much, I make this much.
Right. Okay.
Right. And it's like, I've been in business for 6 years, so you'll have cycles. You'll have times like it's super profitable, sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. But the benefit you have with your offer is like there's maximum trust. Like with consulting right now, there's very little trust. Like there's a lot of low trust right now, compared to when I started 6 years ago. With what you're doing, it's just clear cut. It's like, I'll get you a show on big podcasts. It's a yes or no. It's very arbitrary. It's like, did you get it or did you not? And you're doing it right now, so you're getting referrals. So as long as you keep getting people on the shows, I think you're fine. Because like they can moan and complain all they want about the results, but that's not really that's not really up to you. Unless you somehow strategically do it in a way where, hey, this podcast guy is going to ask you XYZ question, but I don't think that's really what they're paying for. They're more just like, hey, if he gets me on big podcasts,
that's what they want. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. My question is, let's say my business doubles tomorrow. Let's say I bring in 20 new people. Mm-hmm. That means I'd immediately have to hire new people to get people booked on podcasts. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be in a position where it doubles overnight and then I'm like, oh, what do I do?
Prep.
How do I effectively, would you recommend that I go out and train some people now and have them in the reserve?
Yeah. So the way business works is like this. So you scale. So you're about to go in this phase. So you're at 0, right? You start scaling, and so you're able to handle all of it. And now you're kind of at like where you feel maybe capacity is, and you're about getting ready to grow. So grow means you're going to SOP that, and you're going to do ads. So right before you do that, all I do is you try to guess. So you're like, okay, how many clients can a podcast booker get? So again, this is just where you just have to be a little smart. So let's just take the number I gave you. Let's say it costs you $4,000 to get a client, which is that's aggressive. It could probably cost you less, but let's just be like, okay, it's going to cost me that much. So if your goal is the next month, you want to start out by spending $10,000 on ads, if that's what you want to do, then you're like, okay, that's going to get me 2 clients. How many more clients can my podcast bookers handle? And you're like,
I know the number. It's like they could, on the high end, 8 people.
Okay. So it's 8 people. So then in your head, you probably just want to go and get one person ready in your bullpen, right? Where it's like, hey, I have one person I can bring on.
And just put them through my entire training process.
Yeah. And so typically what happens is you're scaling, your profit's at an all-time high, and then you're preparing for more scale. So your profit goes down because you hire new people, and then you go back up and your profit's at an all-time high, and then you're getting ready to scale more. So you hire new people. So you're right here where your profit's going to go down because you're going to overhire shortly, so you can scale. But then that's how business works. So like you hire this person, you don't really need them yet. And then you jack the ads up, you get new clients. Then it's like, oh, I need them. And then you just rinse and repeat that process.
So for you, when you started to scale your
business, you're going to need to start looking for a manager, because you're going to want like a podcast booker manager.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
You usually want one manager for every 4 people.
Could a manager be, I mean, probably not. I got somebody in mind. He's super good. Like he's a booker himself though. Like would the manager have to be someone that has done the job themselves?
Not always. I mean, a lot of times in companies, it's easy to promote within, but it just depends if you think they have the skill set to handle it, because leading people is different than doing. So meaning like some guys are really good at sales, but they're terrible sales managers because they're not good at getting people results. But again, you can SOP it. So it's the same thing. So like if you were a podcast booker, what you would want to do, like right now you're the manager, right?
Yeah.
So what would you do? Task. How to manage podcast bookers, video, show yourself doing it, high level steps, checklist, right?
Same.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what I've realized for me is like a big mistake I made is because we got like 60, 70 people, dude. So there was a point in time where we were hiring so fast that we just would kind of bring people in and it was not a very good onboarding. And we're just kind of like, yeah, the XYZ ABC. And like, as I've been auditing people, I've realized, oh my gosh, like they're missing so much. And it's just because no one ever sat down and was like, okay, so here's like your day and here's what you should be doing task wise. And and the funny thing is, it takes you one time to do it, and then all that stress should be gone. And then if they're not doing it, you take them back. It's like, yo, did you watch this? Yeah. Okay, then why aren't you doing it? Because it should be black and white. So we have like an org chart, and then everyone has a hyperlink, and the hyperlink has their daily stuff, monthly, weekly, daily, like everything they need to do. So if they don't do it, we can go there and like, what's the deal?
Yeah, that
You know
makes
what I'm
sense.
saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you were scaling your business, what do you feel like was the biggest challenge for you?
Well, nothing really. It was just finding the people.
Just
I mean,
finding people.
because like the process to me is very straightforward. So it's just finding good people. It's just trusting that they're going to do it. Because as the business scales, what happens is you no longer can do everything. So you have to trust that your manager is going to do a good job, which means you have to have clear SOPs and you got to make sure that you put them in a position to win. And then you're going to have meetings with your manager, right? So what starts happening is you're the manager now. And then as you hire managers, you're managing the managers. And then when you get to the higher level where I'm at, is you have a C-suite and then you have managers who manage the managers who manage the team. Like I'm like 3 levels now. So I have like this person, and then we have managers, and then we have managers, and then there's me.
Right.
So I'm like managing. I'm managing the managers of the team.
Yeah.
Like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why it's like really important. You have clear SOPs, and then you just look for good people. The good news for you is like I don't think what you're doing is super complex. Meaning, how much experience do you need to be a podcast player?
I just hired somebody. I did this deliberately to see if I could do it. He didn't have any experience.
Yeah.
And he's crushing it.
Yeah, so there you go. And then if it's clear SOPs, you're good, right? So all managers are doing is making sure that the team is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So if you hired a manager for the podcast bookers, sometimes the manager can also do that. So like, let's say half the day they manage, half the day they do whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just you want to get production. But there's going to be a point where you don't want to have to sit there and check on the podcast bookers.
Okay.
Right. So if you're checking on them now, that's fine. But as you scale, like if you double or triple in size, like you won't have time for that because you're going to be managing the sales team and the marketing team. And like it gets.
So at what point is it just when I cap out is when I bring on a person for sales, or is it like when I don't want to do it no more? Like,
usually. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the two. You could do it right now, but you'd have to be okay to spend, they're going to make what, 17,000 a month. Are you cool with that? If you're cool with that, yeah. And it takes time to train usually.
Yeah.
Unless they're super experienced. So you could go out and say, hey, I have a sales position, 17,000 a month commission. You'll get a higher level guy. But you have to understand your revenue will go down. So usually what will happen is if you're doing 175, you hire a new sales guy, you might go down to like 135, plus you pay him 13.5 because like he's going to be less efficient than you for sure. Because you're making the max sales, like you're the guy, you're the CEO. So whoever comes in under you is going to do less than you. So you have to be willing to take that hit. In fact, it's kind of funny, but I think at the highest levels of the game, you put people in place knowing that they'll be less efficient than you, and you're just not going to make as much. But it's just
the name of the game.
Just leverage. Yeah. You just have to get more leverage.
Okay.
So you could do it, but if you're not busy and you still have time, I would do it until you're close to maxed out, and then you could start trying.
So yeah, that kind of like with my time now, because like I'm just so used to like just send messages and like I kind of feel like I'm still stuck in that mode. It's like I don't really know what to spend my time on.
Yeah.
I'm being quite honest. Like I manage them. I get on calls with my team. Like, should I be doing calls daily? That's kind of like a QC, like you were saying, like, all right, guys.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do, so the first thing is do the SOP stuff, right? Okay. Number 2 is then you should have calls daily, right, with your team. So what I would do is I'd have, it could be anywhere between no more than 30 minutes, or maybe your setter would be longer. So like this guy, you might spend an hour with him a day, 30 minutes to an hour where you're going through messages, you're going through conversation, you're checking to make sure he's doing what he says he's doing. Because someone's got to manage that, right? Anywhere between 15 to 60 minutes. I do one call with him, one call with them, or you could put the VA in here and you do one call with them. So you're having 3 calls right there. Then the rest of your time, you're doing sales calls, or you could do more messaging with them. Because like right now, you have free time and everyone's handling fulfillment. So really, you should just keep trying to make more sales. So it should be sales calls and or more messaging. right? Or if you want to get your ads going, you do the ads, right? But once you start the ads, guess who's going to have to do the messaging? I don't think that guy can do both, so you'll have to step back in, right? So like messaging, ads, and then just hire.
Okay.
But you have the base of your business. This is a great spot to be because you got your fulfillment's handled, you got your first little setter, et cetera. So you got your base, right? And so now from here, it's just more ads, more leads, and then just managing your team. So yeah, your day should be like you're going to turn into part-time manager, and then the rest of the time you're still doing sales and messaging. And then as that scales, you're going to start offloading all of the to-dos. So like the sales and messaging is the next thing you offload, and then you're only managing. So then you would add in here, like as you scale, you're going to have sales guys, right? You're going to have more setters. So let's say you had 3 setters. You might have a team meeting, but then you might have one-to-ones too. So then you start just turning into like a full-time manager and leader.
Okay.
So like my days is just, I mean, all I do is do like management calls all day, pretty much.
Okay.
And like hire and develop talent, stuff like that.
So let me ask you this then. This is kind of what I'm thinking. So I have a couple clients that are coming up on the end of their time working with me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to maximize LTV, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I had a guy tell me, he was like, yeah, one thing you could do is like tell them, hey, you've been getting booked on podcasts. Now would you like to really like maximize you being on a podcast and offer them like, we're going to train you how to speak on these podcasts.
It's whatever. I mean,
or is it just more of the same thing? Offer them, or it's like I don't know. I don't know what to offer as an ascension offer.
Well, I think when you're thinking of what to offer, is you first think is like, is there a next step? So it's like they paid you to book them on podcasts. What would the next step be?
Yeah, I had someone tell me, he was like, dude, like you should get them on speaking gigs. It's like
it just depends what's easiest though. So like for us, like we have the mastermind, which is like it's like, hey, you know, how do you do your offer, how to do this, how to do that. And then the next one is more of like hiring, training, developing ads, right? So it's just the next progression in business. So it's super easy upsell in terms of like, okay, you're here, you need this, like you should buy this.
So should I be worrying about that right now or not really? Because like
I think you definitely should have something, but it also needs to be something easy to do. So do I, like, for example, okay, so like I want to make this easy for you. So here's the mastermind. Okay. And then like here's next level. The fulfillment's very similar. It's just this is more focused on ads and like team building and hiring and training. This is more focused on the beginning, right? So like if you were in here, for example, we would try to pitch you to come here because that's the next stage you're at. Devin, you're trying to hire, you're trying to train, right? You should come here. Makes sense because it's a natural progression. With what you're doing, it's going to be one of two things. So like if here's your podcast, and then it's either going to be like, yeah, you could just sell them more. So like part of it is like, it's like an ad agency. It's like they don't change what they're doing. They're just like, do you want us to keep running your ads? So the easiest one would probably be, I'll get you on more. I don't know what the limit to that is. I don't know if like you start running out of shows and right? If you don't and they like the service, it's like, do you want to keep getting it? And part of that's going to depend on the results they got, right? So probably more than likely they're going to look at like how many sales did they make from the podcast. If they made sales, they'll probably easily upgrade. If they didn't,
yeah, and that's kind of the thing, you know, because like get you on a podcast book today, but you might not record it for a month and a half from now.
Yeah, sure. So it takes time.
So
so you either would do more of what you're currently doing, or you would do the next progression. So I don't know what the next progression would be, but if you're saying,
about that. Huh? I said I got to think about that.
Right. So if you're saying like the next progression is
probably another form of media, right? Because we know these people want exposure. So why wouldn't they want to be in other forms of media?
Yeah. So whatever. Yeah. So, but usually it's like something that's like a step up or a next thing. So like, you know, like again, has the same thing. So has like his little mastermind here. And then this one here is like, hey, we're going to get you setters and closers. The same, it's the next progression. It's like, hey, now that you've scaled and you've gone up, we're going to give you, so it just naturally makes sense, right? So you're either going to do more of the same thing, which is just you're going to re-up. So it's like a fitness coach. Fitness coaches are not really going to do much different. Yeah. It's the same thing. Or you're going to re-up, or you're going to move them into the next phase, which would be, like you said, it's like, hey, now that you've gotten on podcasts, the next step is to learn how to speak well. or that would make sense to me, or, but it has to be something that you can fulfill on and isn't going to be a huge strain, right? Because if you're just upselling more of what you're doing, that's easy because you're not doing anything different. If you're doing something like completely different, that can get a little difficult.
Yeah.
So I mean, part of it is you need to ask your clients what it is. So like when they're leaving, you could have an exit interview and you're like, what did you like about the service? What didn't you like? What do you wish you could have gotten more of? You know, you could even be like, if you were continuing, what would make you want to continue, if anything? But like for us, the biggest thing I've seen in my mastermind is like they come in and they make money. That's number one. And then if they make money, they trust us to go to the next level. And like it literally makes sense. Like it's like Elite CEO's Mastermind, our next thing is called Next Level. It's like you were here. Let's say like you were at 0, now you're doing 15 or 20K a month. Now you're here and you need to hire a team and train and build an SOP and all this other shit. Right? So that's why we sell that, because it's just a natural progression.
Yeah. All right, cool. That makes sense.
And then once someone gets to that level, it's usually just more of the same thing over and over again. But that is the one downside of information marketing, which is what I don't like, is it's harder to keep people on, because once they get what you're selling, they deem if it's valuable or not. And then if they don't, then they're out and they're not going to like, they're like,
super sticky.
Yeah, it's like not as sticky because it's just info, right? So info is only valuable until they get it. Then once they get it, it's not valuable anymore.
All right, cool. This is kind of like a really small thing, but one thing that really pisses me off are deposit refunds.
Like, why does it piss you off?
Just does. Like I feel like the call is a waste of my time. Right?
Well,
so like,
you don't have to do a call. You don't have to.
I just don't want to make it refundable. But like, because I don't want people that are curious about it. Like,
give me context on a call you got a deposit, what happened, and then.
I'm all in. All right, cool. Okay. So it's just a matter of timing. Like you just need a couple of months to figure it out, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put down $1,000 today, and then when you're ready, we're just gonna put down the rest of the whatever it was, and then we're just gonna get started. Oh yeah, I'm all in. Sounds good. A month goes by. Hey, change in plans. I need my money back.
Okay, and did you say, hey, like, what did you say?
I just gave her money back. Like I didn't want to go through it. Like, to be honest with you, like, because I just had a couple of experiences like that, and it's just like they always tend, in my experience, to not come through, and they're usually a lower level type of person.
So it's totally your call. So the first thing is you only have the call if you want to save it. So a lot of times what will happen is people have gotten scared for whatever reason. And so I'll be like, hey, no worries. No worries. Typically what I do is I just want to, like, typically my refund process, we just get on a quick 10-minute call and walk through everything. And or I don't even say that. I'm like, hey, yeah, just let me know you got 10 minutes. I'll walk you through the refund process on a call.
Okay.
Right. And then like I get them on the call, and then usually all I'm trying to do is like, yeah, so, you know, I just want to let you know there's no pressure to continue. I just wanted to get context on like what's going on and see if there's like something I can do to help. And a lot of times like they're scared, and then what I can do is recommit them. Doesn't always work, but it can work. That's the reason I tell my sales guys to do it, because I'm like, what do you have to lose? If you don't get it, you didn't lose anything. If you do get it, you saved it. The other thing you can do is like what you said, you just get on the call and go, yeah, so what I do in the situation is I just put down, I would just have you put down 1,000 non-refundable deposit, and then you can pay the rest then. And then it's even more commitment because you're saying it's non-refundable, right? I say refundable because then it doesn't give them any reason not to do it. Because then some people are like, oh, well, I don't want to put it down if it's non-refundable. And I'm just like, right? Because then it's another objection, but you could do that. But the mistake you really made was you didn't set a start date, I think. Like you need to set date. So it's like, hey, I can't start for whatever. You're like, cool. So that's totally fine. But what I need you to do today is you put something down, and then we schedule a start date, and you would need to schedule it. And if they don't schedule it, those are the worst when you have these open-ended loops.
Yeah, that's what
never want to do that.
Okay.
Because it never works. I've had a guy put a deposit down, and he didn't, like, I even set a date, and then the date came, and he's like, oh, I need more time. Dude, it's been 3 months now. Like, he still hasn't come in. And I just kind of like, it's fine. I mean, just move on. But you need to do a set date, but also just like, that's just going to happen sometimes. So yeah, you can either get on the call and save it, or if you don't think it's worth it, just refund them for sure. Or just make it non-refundable.
Yeah.
You can tell them it's non-refundable. That's totally fine. It's just, it's a little harder frame because you're like, hey, it's non-refundable. And they're like, well, then why would I put it down? It's like, because like, then you have to come up with the reasons, like, because if you don't put it down, like, I'm not going to work with you. And it's like, it's a little more aggressive.
Yeah. I think I've gotten to that point.
Well, yeah, because you're taking all the calls.
Yeah.
And it's normal. And like, you just feel like it's a waste of your time, and that's
Right.
why. And I get it. So yeah, I mean, those are your options. You just pick which one you want.
Now this is probably something that's down the road. I'm not really thinking about it super hardcore, but like,
Uh-huh.
at what point do I offer like a smaller ticket item? You know what I mean? Because like last time I was here,
when you start running ads and stuff, or like when you are not as involved quite as much, like I think you're too involved to like start focusing on that.
so just keep doing this shit.
Yeah, because the biggest needle mover right now
100%.
is just more leads. And so how do you get more leads? The setter and then ads. For you to offer something lower ticket, it's like, what's the point? The whole point of low ticket is to liquidate some of the ad spend, but your business is like super lean right now, and that's going to take you more work, and you're going to make less money. Like, again, if you were like, hey, how do I double my business in 30 days? Like, if we had a gun to our head and it's like, hey, you have to get Devin's business to 400,000 in the next 30 days, and we're going to kill you both, I would immediately go to your house right now. We'd shoot ads. I'd get on with your setter. I'd show him exactly what I want him to do, and then we'd start pumping the ads, and I'd help you take sales calls. That's what we would do, because that's the only way you would do it. So it's like, if that's the case, then why would I build out a low ticket item? Because that's not going to move the needle that much.
Right.
Now, like for my company, we got 60 people. So if Ben's like for us, if we have a low trust issue, then sometimes what we'll do is we'll sell the low ticket thing here, and the team barrages them to buy the high ticket thing. But you're not having any issue right now. And what the biggest needle mover in your business is selling more of what's working. Like in a perfect world, dude, I never want to sell low ticket items. The reason you have to do it at scale is it gets so expensive to run the team that if you don't get, like if I spend $400,000 on ads, this is the premise of low ticket. So if I spend $400,000 on ads and I get a 2x ROI, I make $800,000. Okay. The premise of low ticket is this: if I spend $400,000 on ads to a low ticket product, let's say we get $200,000 in cash up front. Then from this $200,000, if we can sell an additional, like this is a bad number. I don't know. Let's just say like this number was 6,000 or something. Okay. I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter. But the point is, like, if you liquidate some of that and then you upsell them, well, yeah, let's say 8 million. Let's say you sell the extra 800,000. Now, what did you make? Well, you technically made more profit, didn't you? I mean, that's the point, because you got some of these people here that were never going to buy this expensive thing, but then you still got a ton of those people to upsell. That's the premise, at least.
Yeah.
Because as you get bigger, what happens? You get your leads, which means you need more lower ticket stuff to kind of get them to buy something so that the ad spend's not wasted.
Yeah.
You're not there yet. You're not spending anything.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then that's going to fuck up your fulfillment and where you're focused and your time. And it's like, you just want to put all your time right here. Yeah.
So I've closed a couple of deals, and I want to hear your take on this.
Okay.
Closed 2 deals this month, one for 15, one for 17 and a half.
Okay.
That was strictly through DM. No sales call required.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if I should, like, for right now, and I think this is the big thing that these leads are asking me. They're like, how much is it? And I tried the whole, like I have stuff that costs $100 to 100,000, really depends.
Yeah.
So I just tell them the price up front.
But what kind of leads are they?
Like really high level dudes.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it's a really high level dude, I mean, a lot of times, like if it's like me, it's like, there's no point in sales call, because I'm just like, because the reason is, I know it doesn't really matter what you say. Meaning, because I pay for stuff where they said good and didn't work, and vice versa. So I'm like, the thing is, like, I don't actually care what you say. I just want to know the numbers. So it's more normal for high level leads. So what I would say is, I usually would start with the range always, because that's a safe play. Why? Because if you say the range and they're like, no, dude, just tell me, then from there you can kind of tell them if you need to. But I would never just strictly drop the price. Some guys will play the game, some guys won't. Like if I was talking to Onik, I would just tell him.
Okay.
Probably. Because he's been in the game a long time. But that's just if it's a higher level lead. Most people, they
scares them off. Or what was it?
Yeah, like it's just like you're basically because if they don't like the price, you have no chance to explain anything, etc. It doesn't work as well. So, I mean, to your question, it worked twice, but how many times did it not work?
Yeah, a lot more than not twice. A lot more than twice, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my question is like if they're being super just like, no, bro, tell me the price or I'm not going to get on a call and stuff, you can do one of two things. You're either like, okay, well, I mean, dude, if you're not, then that's fine. Like, I'm just not going to work with you. It's totally cool. That's what I'll say to some people. And they're like, all right, fine, I'll get on the call or whatever. Or if it's a higher level lead, I'll just tell them. But when I say higher level lead, they need to have it, I would say at least a couple $100,000 business, because a lot of guys, it's just like, if they're not, there's no reason for them to be like that, I don't think.
Yeah.
If you have some examples you want me to look at, I can. But typically I would start with, it's a range, et cetera, et cetera.
No,
and
I
then
got
if they
it.
push, then I can.
And then the other thing is this: a lot of them sometimes they'll ask for like, well, what shows are you going to get me on? It's kind of like hard to tell you before I start working with you what shows I'm going to get you on.
Yeah. So
this is what I say. I say typically, when I've worked with someone similar to you, these are a list of shows that we were able to get them on.
Yeah. Or you say, or you would just say, hey, so it varies, but here's some of the shows that we've gotten people on. You just list your best shows.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because you're not promising anything. You're just like it varies per person, but these are the types of shows. Or like it varies per person of what you want, but these are some of the shows we've gotten people on.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. I got to change that up a little bit.
Yeah, you don't need to give them specifics. You just like, it's like someone's like, how much money are you going to make me? I'm like, I mean, it ranges, but like our average student makes X amount in 30 days. Something like
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Trying to see what else I have written down here.
I just noticed your shirt. I get you booked on big podcasts.
You like that, huh?
Ask me how.
Yeah, you like that. I'm that.
Around Miami. Everyone's like,
I'm,
how do you do it?
I'm that guy.
Do it?
Hey, you got to market, baby.
Dude, I'm not fucking hating at all.
So I think this is pretty clear in terms of the stages forward.
Yeah, I mean, your last stages, you definitely were way more fucked up last time. Last time I was so tired talking. Like at the end of our interview, end of our thing, I was like, because there's just a lot of shit to cover.
Yeah.
But you're in a way better spot now. So the good news now, and what you'll see, dude, is it's like all you're doing at scale is you're doing more of what's working, and then you replace yourself. And then you just keep buying back your time. And then that's why people want to start a business, because eventually you can, like, even me, dude, I don't have to work. It's just like, one, I want to work. And then two, there's always stuff to do, but I don't have to work. Like, so next week I'm going to go to Brazil, right? I don't have to work. And I just told my team, I was like, look, I planned this in October. It's not really great timing. It'd be better if it was different, but like, I'm going to go. And when I come back, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when let me ask you personally, when you were in this phase of your business, what kept you motivated? What was it? Was it just the money, or like what was it for you? And there's no right or wrong answer.
I think so, yeah. Because like when I was where you were at, I wanted to hit $1 million a month, and so I was just fucking, yeah, dude, I was just rock hard, and I was enjoying it. Like I was like finally out of the hole. I finally had some cash in my bank account. I was like, okay, I know like I'm gonna be okay moving forward. And then so I just like wanted to keep growing, because like I was just on this trajectory. So like the fun thing is like when you haven't hit your first like down month yet. So meaning you were here at 0 and now you're just going this direction, and you should keep going there for a while. So every month I would make 100,000 more, 100,000 more, 200,000 more. I was like, dude, I thought it was going to go forever. And then finally you're going to get to a point where you're going to have a month and it might go down, and then it gets like a little bit, I'd say less exciting, because it's like a bottleneck. And now I've been in business 6 years, and it's like, it's just like some months are higher, some months are lower. Like it's just never the same. But I like where you were at was like one of the most fun times I had, because you have just enough team where you're not doing everything, but you're still tons of profits. You're making lots of money, and you're still learning and growing. So, but also just don't feel obligated. Like everyone's different. Like what inspires me may not inspire you. So I think you just need to be really clear on what you want to do. For me personally, I always had a goal to hit $1 million a month. So until I hit $1 million a month, I was a psycho. Like I worked where you were at, I worked just as hard as when I was broke. I don't know if you didn't meet me that year, did you? But where you were at now, that year I did over 10 million, and I was fucking, dude, I was just working all. I remember I was dating, I didn't realize this at the time, but it was literally her birthday. I forgot it was her birthday. And halfway through the day, she's like, hey babe, like, are we gonna do like dinner or something? I was like, oh yeah, for sure, babe. I plan a last minute dinner. We go eat dinner. We come back from dinner, and she thought like I was gonna spend time with her and like we were gonna have sex and stuff. And I literally like not thinking. I was like, yeah, babe, I'll be there in a second. And I go back to my computer. It's like 9 o'clock. I don't get in bed with her till 1 o'clock in the morning. She's asleep. but I just was so, and this was when I was in,
That's funny as
I was in you can see it from here. I don't know if you see that anyways, one of those buildings that you see Thousand Museum, the one next to it. I was in the best penthouse they have. Like I was just like fucking grinding. It was like a 5,000 square foot. And I don't know, man. Like I think I wanted to do it to prove I could do it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am, because like where I was, like you and I share some similarities in terms of like doing very well in college and stuff like that. And I felt like up until this point, for the past couple of years, I kind of like always felt like I had so much more that I could do that was in me. And now I'm finally in that position where I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, so that was me. That doesn't have to be you, but I was in full grind mode, and then once I crossed 1 million, I finally was like, okay, so now that I've hit 1 million, like now what? And then, you know, you start realizing like, okay, there's limitations to certain businesses, and you're like, okay, there's other high leverage tasks, and then you're like, okay, this isn't really, you know, like quote unquote, this isn't going to make me happy. So then I like kind of reevaluated my life a little bit. But I mean, I'll share something with you that I was telling him just the other day. Like this hit me like a few days ago, last week. So I went and saw Steve. In Arizona, and then I listened to a podcast with Chris Williamson and Mosey, and then I listened to another podcast between the guy on Diary of a CEO and this relationship guy. And for me, I don't know if this will help you or not, but I know for me I don't know, man, like probably the last few years, I was really, you know, when I was at my peak or pinnacle, I had the Lamborghini Aventador. I was living at Thousand Museum. It was $25,000 a month. I was like dating tons of girls. And yeah, dude, I just was like, didn't feel very good. And anyways, so I've kind of been going on that journey. And then recently this last weekend, I was having a discussion, and it was funny because someone said, I was telling them about my, like kind of girl issues. I think I've told you about, where it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, should I date her? Should I not date her? And dude, it was really interesting because one of the dudes said, he goes, yeah, dude, you're just optimizing for the wrong thing. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're like trying to be happy, right? I was like, well, yeah. He's like, yeah, shouldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, so what should I do? Like, I'm thinking like, this guy's being smart. So he's like, yeah, he's like, you should optimize your life for your goals, and then you just find the best person to help you get there. The reason you don't know what you're doing is your goal in life is to be happy. And he's like, that's a dumb goal. Because he's like, your emotions change on a daily basis. He's like, so you literally make decisions every day based on how you feel. What a dumb way to live your life. I was like, I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Like, think about the gym. It's like, what do we say? You want to be in shape, you go every day, regardless of how you feel, right? Yeah. And so I realized that I wasn't doing that in my relationship life. So I heard that. So then I started going, well, what are my life goals? Because I'm starting to, I think that's been the thing I've been looking for the last few years. Like, what am I really trying to do? You know? And so then I listened to a podcast. Then I went to see Steve, and there was like this whole thing about how to be in different situations, which helps because it really helped me this weekend. Like, that's probably the best I've ever handled it, right?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Right?
When you told me that.
Like, I think you even thought last night I was in a bad mood. I was like, nah, I feel good. Yeah. Because something happened, and like I handled it like a fucking champ. I was proud of myself. I was like, I really handled that like a fucking G. Like, I was like top G for sure. So then, anyways, let's get into the point. So then I listened to the podcast with and I don't know, some relationship expert, and he goes, you know, he's like, do you know what the number one indicator of like 99% of divorces have in common? And I was like, you know, I'm thinking like infidelity, finances, and he's like, it's like they don't have shared values. And I was like, dude, duh. And it's like, if you think about it, the whole reason you hang around who you hang around is usually their shared values, right? So like I'm really good friends with, but me and it's like we like the same stuff. We talk about the same things. People I don't relate to, they're not going the same direction, so I don't find it interesting, right? I don't know if you noticed, but I'll sit down with some people, and what makes them interesting is like if they're interested in things I'm interested in, right? So anyways, what I'm getting to is, once I heard that, I go, well, so it's not really about which, and this will relate to business though, but it's like, it's not really about which girl makes me feel the best or I'm the most attracted to. It's about which girl best will support my goals, which means which girl best sees my vision. the more values you share with and align with, it makes life easier because like fitness, we both value fitness. So we both go to the gym. We both work out all the time. I like that she works out. Like it's a shared thing. That was a relationship example. But I think you need to figure out what your goal is. And then that's what you spend your time optimizing for versus how you're feeling. Because I think that's why I've been so miserable is without realizing it, I'm like, oh, well, I don't feel good. And I don't do this and I don't do that. And then someone's like, yeah, you're for doing that. That's stupid.
All right.
And then literally this week I had something happen and I was like, I would wake up and I literally would think, I go, yeah, I don't feel that good and it's okay. And literally because I say that to myself, I feel okay. It's weird, dude. Like I literally feel okay. I woke up, I was like, yeah, I don't feel that happy today and it's fine. Because if you're not optimizing to feel good and you're not worried if you feel happy all the time, ironically, I think you feel better. And then what's cool is then I'm not hoping that a girl will make me feel better. I'm just like, yeah, does this girl fit my mission or not? And a lot of what they talk about in the best relationships is they're like boring. They're like, they are boring, but they're healthy relationships because technically a lot of times when you have a lot of toxicity and drama, that's like exciting, but it's actually not a healthy relationship. And
Right.
so I don't know if that helps you. So I think what I'm trying to say is where you're at now is I think you just need to try to get clear on where it is you want to go, whether like God is going to be your center. Like God's not a bad center to have, by the way. It's like, I think the reason that works for a lot of people is because the whole premise of it is like, be kind to others, give back, etc. So it's like when people are focused on that and you're focused on other people, you feel better. I believe that. When you're focused on yourself, you're like, why am I not happy? This and that. That's you focusing on you, and that ultimately is going to lead you down a miserable path. And I think it's funny too. I think that now with the girl stuff, I think I was telling you, I was like, I don't know if I can be with one girl. I might have to do open, whatever. But when you think about that, that's coming from how I feel. And now that like I've had that mindset shift, I'm like, okay, so I don't think that's the right question. The question is, where am I going? And then who's going to best support that? And if the girl's monogamous, then that's it. And that's what you do, which probably is going to be the case, right? Because it's like, there's just not that many girls who like really want you to find other girls. And it doesn't really help your mission. So that made it a lot easier for me because I'm over here focusing, relaying it back to you. It's like, I just wouldn't focus on like how you feel. If you're like, oh, I feel good doing this or I feel bad. I just think it needs to go back to what's the mission kind of outside yourself. And then when you're focused on that on a daily basis, I think you'll be happy. Like you actually will feel better than if you're focused on feeling happy. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
So taking that back to you, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that's what you need to focus on is what is your goal? And then focus on taking actions around that goal and don't worry about how you're going to feel. Cause like, it's a losing path. For me, when I was broke, I went from zero. My goal is to hit 1 million. So I thought when I hit 1 million, I'd feel different. That's why I was so driven. I was like, once I hit 1 million, and then I hit it and I didn't feel different. And that's kind of what took me down that rocky path. Cause like, it like kind of shook my reality. Cause I was like, I thought if I hit that, I'd feel different.
What'd you think it would feel like?
Dude, I don't know, bro. Like, I just thought maybe like people would like, in my head, it was such a big deal. I guess maybe I thought other people would be like, yeah, like almost like, I don't know, like a dream where everyone's like, yeah, Tanner, like the whole world's like, yeah. Like, and then like what happened was someone asked, like, yeah, how's business? I was like, yeah, man, I just hit 1 million in a month. And they're like, cool. And then like, they didn't give a, yeah, they literally didn't give a, and I was like, yeah, I was like it kind of hurt. Like, it kind of hurt, not because they're being a dick. It just hurt because I was like they didn't even give a
Yeah.
like they didn't give a dude. And so I'm sorry I just went on that tangent. So
Let me take a picture of that.
Oh yeah, I hope that answered your question, but I think what you need to really get clear on for you is now that you're out of that kind of like, holy I'm gonna die, which is where you were last time I saw you. You're in a better spot. So hypothetically, even if you just kept doing this amount per month, you're gonna walk away in the next year. You'll take home 1 million something, which is a lot of money. So it's like very quickly that will get boring. And so I think you got to be clear where you're going. I know like for his whole goal, dude, is like, he literally is just like, I just want to do epic shit I'll be proud of. He's like, when I die, I just want to be able to look back and say I did cool shit. And that's why I'm trying to focus on other people, which is why he writes all the books and all this other stuff. And like, yeah, I mean, that's his goal.
So let me ask you this: it's kind of with the money that I'm now making, right? Like even if I do spend money on ads, I'm still going to have a lot of profit.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend doing with that extra money?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I do, and then you can decide if it's worth your time. So what I do is I do whole life policies, and I use it. It's called the infinite banking concept.
Yeah.
So you know what that is? So I dump it all there. The premise of it, and I did this last year. So here's the cool thing. So I've dumped millions of dollars in it. Here's what I did last year. For 3 to 4 years, you have to fill them. So then what I did last year is I took out like a couple $1,000,000 and I moved it into real estate, commercial. And this commercial real estate deal is going to make me probably like 25% ARR, which means per year it's 25%. So I put in 2 million. That means if it's in there for 3 years, I'll make 1.5 million, which is a lot of money. And then any of the access, like some of this I can't move all out. So then I put that in stocks, but I'm not a huge fan of stocks. I only do it because they forced me to, and I put in the lowest amount. And I can explain that in more detail, but I just do low risk stuff because the whole point of investing is not to lose what you got. It's not to make a lot of money. The point is to preserve. The whole point of business is to be aggressive and make money. Then the money you make, I like doing in here. So the cool thing about this is the way these are set up is when I'm 40 years old, which is like 8 years, which yeah, it's like, I don't know, but I'm fine. I don't need the money right now. I already make plenty, but at 40 years old, I'll be doing like about $1 million a month of passive income just from that. So, and that doesn't include all the real estate I'm doing, right? So if I'm making, let's say on this particular deal, 500,000 a year, plus at 40, this will be $1 million a month. And guess what's cool about this? This money is tax free. So a lot of this, like real estate, that 25%. So if I make 1.5 million, I have to pay what, like 300-400 grand in taxes, right? This is tax free. So what I would recommend is, like, I'm just telling you what I do is you put it in here, which typically it will make about 5% a year. And then what you do is when it matures in 3 to 4 years, you take loans against it and put it here. So guess what? It's making 5% here. At the same time, this is making 25%. So you're making the dollar do two things at once. And then once this comes to fruition, I'll take that money, the real estate money, I'll take that money and dump it back in, or I can like go pay these loans off and just redo it. But I'm pretty conservative. I got to follow up with him. He owes me money, but I just thought of it. But like I've seen my friends do risky deals where it's like 10% returns a month and stuff. And every deal I've seen someone do that, they've gotten like they've always gotten the rug pulled out from under them, and etc. I mean, my friend was showing me like every single day, and I put in like 100 grand, which is for me a small amount just to see, and exactly what I thought would happen happened. And so I'm just like, anything that's like super sexy, I don't do. The only other thing some people will do is like index funds, which is like 3%.
Right.
But I like the whole life policies better because what my dad does is he maximizes cash value. He lowers the death benefit as low as possible. And that's all I really care about. I don't care about the death benefit. I'm doing for cash value. And then what happens is it's like, they call it the infinite banking system because you're making interest on that money and then you pull loans against it and use it. And that's what banks do. So if you were a bank, you're like, Tanner, here's 100 grand. You make money on my money, right? And then they'll go and use it usually, right? So I'm a bank, you give me 100 grand, and then I use your 100 grand and I just pay you a little bit of interest, which is kind of like, the whole point of this is it's your money. So instead of you giving it to the bank and the bank goes and uses it, you put it in, and then when you're ready to use it, you use your own funds. So you're your own bank.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to me, that's the best way to get wealthy, and it's the safest, which is all I care about. That's what I would do. So if you want to intro, I can intro you. I can intro the guys who do the real estate deals, but I definitely would do like the pyramid. Like if it's a pyramid, my pyramid is the whole life policies set up the way I talked about. Then it's the real estate, and then I have a little bit in stocks.
Okay.
And the stock process I follow is it's called the little green book that still beats the market. That's the strategy I follow. It's super simple. It's very straightforward. Read the book.
Do you have a CPA you could put me in touch with?
Yeah, if you want, sure.
I need one, so that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And do you recommend like a lawyer or anything?
Nah, if you have a legal situation, you let me know and I can get you in touch. It's just, you just want one-offs.
Okay.
You don't want one on retainer, but if you need a lawyer, I can put you in touch with people. I actually, I've used a lawyer she's done stuff for Donald Trump. I have her in my back pocket. She's super pricey, but I have her. And then I have another guy who's like cheaper.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I can put you in touch with either. But it's usually just like case by case basis.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I think that's really it, man. We covered a lot.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's more straightforward this time because the last time you were just all over the place with your.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just SOP. Make sure you spend time with that setter guy, get it all cleaned out. So it's like you should have consistency. So each month you should know how many sales he's going to make. It should be like, hey, if he does this many messages, he'll make this many sales. And then start running ads. And then you just keep hiring and building the team. And then, I mean, to be frank, like where you're at now, you should be able to get, you shouldn't stop making money until like your ads break. But dude, you got like kind of like you kind of have like the offer. Part of the reason been able to scale very easy is like the big thing he's done, which I don't want to do now. If I was in a different place, I would, but I'm ready to move on to new stuff. But the reason he's been able to do really well with that, in my opinion, is like the sales rep thing, because that automatically gets higher level leads, but he spends like $50 a lead. So he spends probably, I want to say like, you know, 8,000, 10,000 a client, but he's selling like $70,000 back end products.
So you can afford to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool. That's all I got, man. Appreciate it. Big dog. My man.
Okay.
So I think that if somebody is thinking about, I kind of want to dive into the entrepreneurship thing, or I don't know if I want to join Tanner's Mastermind, I want you to ask yourself, are you sitting on the sidelines? Because one day you're going to get to the end of it and you're going to regret sitting on the sidelines rather than being in the game. The second thing is there's probably a lot of people watching this that are blaming their circumstances for where they are. And that's where the second quote comes in. It's from George Bernard Shaw. He said that most people blame circumstances for where they are, but I don't believe in circumstances. The people that get up in this world are the people that get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, they create them. So I really think that if someone's at that position where they want to take their life to the next level in whatever regard, it's understanding that there's going to be circumstances that you can control, but spending any energy on those is worthless. So spending energy on the things that we can control. So what I just did was focus on the things that I can control. And the last thing that I'll say is, like Alex Hormozi, how he defines leverage is the difference between what you put in and what you get out. So in building this business, I've been very creative and strategic about how I've developed partnerships and relationships. And I just didn't do what everybody else around me was doing because I knew I wanted to get different results. So I just studied people who were where I wanted to be, took their advice, and then sat down in my room and said, okay, like, what else can I do to kind of just outsize my returns? And that's what I did inside of the business that enabled me to get to this point. And then it's going to be some more of the same things, and then following advice from Tanner and so forth. So yeah, just stop sitting on the sidelines, because that's never a good place to be, because you will always watch the people that are actually in the game and say, boy, I wish I was them.